Hey, what is up? What's up? We're back at the studio. I'm back in the studio with brand new content. I took a couple of months off. I'm building a couple of new rooms here behind me in my live room, and with the holidays and with taking the time to DIY build that stuff, I wanted to take a little time off. And so I'm sorry that I have been away for the last couple of months, but I'm glad to be back. And if you are a faithful Capsule to Cone follower, thanks for joining us on this video. Today, we're going to talk about reamping some drum room microphones. We've got a great track by the band Idle Minds. It was recorded in a small studio, and we're going to pipe it through a PA, and we are going to set up a bunch of microphones and get a bunch of rad sounds to kind of glue this whole kit together. And we're going to do that right after the bumper, so let's get into it. All right, so first things first, we got to talk about who in the world should even be using a technique like this. People that are making like vibey rock records, loud rock records that are maybe lean a little bit more like indie rock, or maybe they lean a little bit more aggressive. You know, if you're doing stuff that's more extreme, like, you know, some metal genres, you're doing some like more extreme poppy type stuff, or even like country stuff that's like got heavier drum sampley type sounds like Hardy. This probably isn't super necessary. You could definitely just lay your samples in, and those genres to me are sort of supposed to sound like the drums are sort of like fake and like a giant. But I think a track like this Idle Minds track, or even some country stuff where it's like something that's a little more vibey, like maybe a Steelwoods type record, or maybe even something like Blackberry Smoke, you definitely want drums that don't sound fake. You want the drums to sound like a real drum kit. And when you're layering in samples to make the drums big and punchy, and to get a little bit more out of your drums, especially drum kit that was recorded in a small room, that can be different because, you know, you've got different ambiances for maybe the snare sample that you're using and the kick, you know, than the kick or whatever. And when you've recorded in a small room, it can be a catastrophe trying to figure all of that stuff out. So if you're recording drums in a small studio or a home studio and you want to make them big, this is the way to do it. Where would you do that though if you don't have the luxury of having a nice big live room like the one that I have? This room is 30 feet by 50 feet. It's got 24-foot high ceilings. Well, I would say that you could probably look at clubs, gathering halls. You could go to a church maybe. There's a church with a PA system. You could also go, like, maybe you've got a cousin that works in a garage and has access to that after hours when the garage isn't being used. And all you're going to need is a laptop and an interface with just a stereo output and some sort of PA system. And so that brings me to how in the world do we hook this up? Well, we're going to use my hearback system. The hearback is really great for me in this room because I've got a left and right line output. Now, you would typically use this so that you can hook the hearback up to maybe another headphone amp and get a bunch more channels of headphones off of the one just little paddle remote. But today we're going to use those line level outputs to actually go into a PA that we've set up right where I normally set my drum microphones up. I'm going to take that stereo output from the hearback and I'm going to patch it into the PA. I've got both speakers set up and I've got a sub for a little more low end, and I've got it turned up to where it feels like the drums are actually being played in this room. Now, it doesn't sound exactly like my drum set, but it sounds like a drum set, and it feels the way that drums sort of feel when they're being played in this room. And that is one of the things that's really, really key. It took me a few times of going back and forth between the control room and the live room and sort of listening, blending to make sure that I had the cymbals to where they felt right and the shells to where they felt right out in the room. And then I started to bring up the room microphones until it actually sounded like what room microphones sound like on a drum kit when drums are really being played. So there's a little bit of trial and error involved, but it was very, very simple to set up. I just set up an aux in Pro Tools and I sent that out to my hearback in stereo and into this PA, and then brought the level up once I had everything balanced the way that I wanted to. All right, so now we're going to talk about everything that we've got patched in on this drum kit. Let's just go through the mics one at a time and we'll listen to what they sound like, okay? So first of all, for reference, let's listen to what our drum kit actually sounds like without any room microphones blended in. You've got this right here. And we've got our close microphones, and we've got some samples blended in. The samples match the drum kit really, really nice. And again, that's sort of what we're going for, is to use these room microphones to really gel those samples with the close microphones and make the ambience on everything sound the same. The first microphone that we're going to listen to is, we've got a close room mic on the drum kit. It's my RCA 44. We'll listen to that one first. I have that turned with the null facing the PA, which is really, really cool. And that sort of gives us some of the boomy stuff that's in the room because it's lower. I usually do this right in front of the kick, and so you end up getting sort of the boomy air of the kick. You get a lot of really nice sounding mid-range. You do have to spend some time EQing it, I find, to figure out what this is actually supposed to sound like when you're blending it in with the kick. I usually use Pro Q for that. Right now, I do have a tiny, tiny bit of EQ on the console, and this is what this microphone sounds like on the kit. I will play it both soloed, and then I will bring the whole drum kit in and let you listen to what it's doing. Here we go. All right, the next microphone that we are going to take a look at is this Royer 101 ribbon microphone that we have placed in the hallway. This is a really cool sounding microphone. I usually do this, especially on stuff that's big rock songs. I don't do it every time I'm doing something that's more country because it can sound really, really splatty. Sometimes I'll do it in stereo. Today we're doing it mono, and here is what this Royer 101 ribbon microphone sounds like out in the hallway. It's pretty cool. We'll go ahead and listen to it both soloed and then blended in with the drum kit. All right, the next microphone is my Akg C422. This microphone is really high up into the ceiling of the live room. It's a stereo microphone. Both capsules come into the DAW separately, and what I decided to do was compress this. I usually compress it on the way in anyways when I'm tracking drums, and I figured let's just go ahead and compress it for this project too. And so I patched it into a pair of distressors set to nuke, and we are blowing the ever-living crap out of this microphone. It sounds really, really cool. So let's go ahead and listen to what that sounds like on its own and then blend it in with the drum kit. Last but not least, I have a pair of SE Electronics ribbon microphones that I have then patched into my Summit 200 mic pre. The Summit is set to where it's pretty much every time a kick or snare is hit, it's getting a little dirty. It's overdriving a little bit. That overdrive light is flashing. And then after that, I'm patching it into a Fatso. This is a UBK Fatso. I am setting it to sort of the big splat mode. It's getting a lot of compression, at least 7 decibels of gain reduction, maybe 10 on some of the hits. It sounds really, really cool. It's very aggressive. I've also got the warmth set all the way up on the compressor. I'm tracking with that, and here is what that pair of microphones sounds like. Oh, they're also behind these. There's a gobo on this side and that side of the kit, which is not a drum kit. It's actually just the PA, but those microphones are low and by the floor and behind those gobos, and here's what they sound like on their own and blended in with the drum kit. Okay, so there we go. That is all of the microphones on their own. Now, I've sort of taken the time to blend them sort of to my taste, but also they're probably a little bit louder than they actually need to be in this mix. They haven't been EQ'd. The other microphones that are coming in uncompressed, they could be compressed, obviously. We have a lot of options here, though. There's a lot of sonic options for blending and trying to get these drums to sound big. I'm just going with just the faders, how I have them set, and I'm sort of leaning on it maybe a little more than I would need to just to hear what all the microphones sound like. Let's go ahead and listen to this drum kit, and I'll bring the fader up and we'll hear what it sounds like to bring the room microphones in. They might be, again, a touch heavier than they need to be, but for example's sake, let's hear what they are actually doing to these drums. So here it is without and with the room microphones. It makes the whole kit sound like that it was recorded in this room. The room microphones, they sound completely believable. It makes the samples just melt into the rest of the drum kit. You can't even tell when everything is going on. You can't even really tell that there are samples, which is sort of the goal, in my opinion. It sounds big, it sounds vibey. There's a lot of room for David, who's gonna be mixing this, to work with and to make these room microphones either be louder or quieter in the mix. You could automate them. It gives you a ton of options. So if you can find a room like this, if you've got access to a room like this and you've got a few extra microphones laying around, I think this is, kind of a cool step. Record your close mics, put a reverb on them while you're recording, tracking, whatever. But then when it's time for you to lay in the samples and to get bigger vibe, more ambience, whatever, add some effects microphones, whatever, find yourself a big room to go into. It could even be the basement under your house. Maybe you've got an unfinished basement, and put some more microphones in there, set up some speakers and capture the ambience of that room and then blend it into your recording, and I think you'll like it. If you've done this before, let me know in the comments. I would love to hear from you. Also, I would be remiss if I did not mention that we have Kemper profiles for sale. You can find a link to that in the description, and I will see you in the next video.